Firstly, happy International Men's Day. Now, some of my clients come to me with lots of different issues, and I'm just going to outline the main concerns they have when they come for an initial consultation. The first one, probably comes as no surprise to you, is obesity. Now, this is the bane of our current generation, and I suspect it's not going to get any better. Now, let's look at some of the issues of obesity. Well, obviously we know about all the nasties. It gives us heart disease, type 2 diabetes, stroke, the big C, etc. But more recently, people have become aware of obesity as relates to the COVID-19 epidemic. Fundamentally, what's been happening when people have been going into hospital with COVID-19, the body's been fighting inflammation and releasing a substance called cytokines. So you may have heard of a cytokine storm. Now, when we talk about inflammation, if you can imagine you've had an insect bite or you've had a cut to your skin, that reddening of the skin that you see is the body fighting an infection, an invader. When that happens internally, it's not necessarily a good thing, perhaps when there's too much inflammation, obviously. And also when you're obese, one of the things that happens, you have excess fat cells. Those fat cells are called adipocytes, and they also release cytokines into the system. So you go to the hospital with the COVID virus, now you're obese, you're releasing the cytokines from two different sources, and we have the perfect cytokine storm. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of people die from that problem. Extremely sad. However, perhaps he could have done something to make himself less liable to that problem. Obesity. Also, further on down the road, if you're obese earlier on in your life and you continue on being overweight, shall we say, you start to affect your joints, your hip joints, your ankles and your knees. It's never good. And it's also linked to other things like depression as well, so it's another reason to lose weight. Now, you will hear people tell you, males are more susceptible to this, believe it or not, and females sometimes they tend to have more common sense than us guys. You'll hear these wondrous weight loss programs that will whip the weight off you, no problem, or a personal trainer that will tell you come along with 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks of my program and all the weight's going to disappear overnight. Or the personal trainer that gets someone who's overweight and unfit and beast in the nature of life, they do more harm than good. Research tells us quite clearly that 70% weight loss initially for clients that are obese or overweight is down to diet. So that's the first thing you have to examine. The remaining 30% initially is down to exercise. Now, I am aware you've got extreme ultra endurance athletes who can virtually eat what they want, but we're not talking about those individuals in this case. We're talking about the average Joe. So how do I help my clients deal with that issue? Well, one of the first things I do is get them to be more active. Not just me taking the stairs, walking to newsagents, etc. And obviously looking at their diet. So obesity, an issue over time, and it needs to be addressed. How we go about that? Diet, without a shadow of a doubt. And really, you should take personal responsibility for this as well. That may sound a bit harsh, but that's the reality of it. How much weight should you lose on a weekly basis if you tap into obesity? Ideally, 2 at the very most 3 pounds a week, because that's sustainable, that's doable, and you're not going to starve yourself. So a long-term strategy for weight loss is what's required. The other things that clients begin to notice, particularly if they've been busy with their careers and all of a sudden they've got young kids appear, they want to go and play with the kids, they find it they're just lacking puff. And the reason is they've got reduced CBR, which is cardiovascular respiratory fitness. So it's the ability to move without getting out of breath. Now, what that relates to cardiovascular respiratory fitness is the amount of oxygen you can take into the body via the lungs, transported to the blood, pumped out by the heart to the working muscles so they can function what we call aerobically. And it's quite often referred to as VO2 max, as a measure of the amount of oxygen the body can absorb and use. Unfortunately, as we get older, that reduces, particularly if you're sedentary. The peak of VO2 max is roughly about 20 to 25. That's when you're at your peak. And from the age of, I believe, 30 onwards, we start to decline our ability to process oxygen. And I believe it's something 8 to 9%, maybe even more in certain individuals, that's ballpark, per decade. And it starts to increase exponentially when we get older at the age of 60. So CPR, most important, we need to start to regain that so that the people are more functional. Then it comes to immobility. This is another biggie as well. People come to me, I've been working in an office for years, I feel so stiff, I feel so immobile. Once again, I go and try and do something with my kids, and I just find I can hardly move. And yeah, I used to play sport when I was a kid and all the rest of the things. So that creeps up with immobility. So one of the first things I do with clients, before I get them swinging kettlebells around, lifting weights above their head, or doing anything that they see in YouTube, I test their mobility in all the joints. Then I give them a program just to get them to get the joints a full range of movement safely. Then we start to load them with weights or bodyweight exercises. But that's the first issue I tend to tackle very, very quickly, alongside dealing initially with the CVR and obesity, by getting them to go for walks, a bit more exercise, etc. And just looking for every excuse to get moving. Now, the American College of Sports Medicine recommends that people starting out an exercise program take 13 minutes of moderate intensity exercise 5 times a week. Moderate intensity is getting slightly out of breath, really. Now, you can do that in one fell swoop, 30 minutes, or you can break it up into segments. You can even do more than that. I would recommend you do a lot more than that. Just look for the opportunity to move quickly and start the process of getting you back into good health and functional ability. Then we come to the classic, particularly for office workers, back pain. The old-fashioned back pain. Now, you think about the lifestyle of some people. They wave bye-bye to the wife, jump in the car, drive to work, they sat down all the time. Take a lift up to the office, sit down in front of the computers or whatever all day, perhaps get up for a bit of lunch, walk around occasionally. And most of the time then, finish a working day having sat down. Then they drive home, sat down. Then they position themselves on the sofa, get the tea in a tray. And then they wonder when they get back pain. Well, initially because the back muscles have not been used at all. You've hardly walked anywhere. So initially when people come to me with back problems, I will say to them, how much walking do you do? And then we discover very little. So I'll say, let's do a little bit of walking of an evening, walk around the block, whatever, and give me feedback to how your back feels. And on quite a few occasions, 7 out of 10 I would say, the back starts to feel better. If not, then I then start to delve into it a little bit further and give them specific exercises for the back, aligned to mobility as well. A lot of the times, if they're immobile on the hips, sometimes they actually be overusing the muscles of the back because they lack mobility. So there's 2 different issues there. Final one then, physique, lean muscle mass. Okay, that's linked into a few things. We start to lose muscular strength from the age of 40 onwards, muscle mass as well, the amount of muscle fibers we actually have. I'll go into in-depth lecture about different muscle fiber types in the future, but suffice to say we start to lose muscle mass at the age of 40. Once again, it's something about 10% a decade in some people. And at 50 we start to lose even more, we lose muscular strength. By the time we get to 60, instead of 10% a decade, we start to lose muscle strength at the rate of 3 or 4% a year. So we're now 60, approaching 70, we've lost all this muscle mass, we're immobile, okay? So all of a sudden, we're struggling to get off the sofa because we haven't got any muscular strength or power. What's likely to happen when you get older? Well, one of the things that does happen is people fall over and they start to fracture the pelvis, fracture the hip, wherever they're unfortunate enough to encounter. Now, there's other issues with that as well, because if we haven't got a very poor diet, i.e. we haven't got enough calcium in the diet, and we're not taking enough load-bearing exercise when we're young, running, jumping, climbing trees and all the other things, your bone density, your bone thickness is not going to be particularly good. So all of a sudden now, as we get older and we've lost muscle mass, as I say, we fall over, we have very thin bones, we have osteoporosis perhaps occurring more in the ladies than the men, and before you know it, we're fracturing things, and next thing you know, we're in care. A lot of that is avoidable. I don't want to sound too morose, but it is very, very avoidable. And they've done research studies in Australia to prove this with large amounts of people. So once you get people through the basics here, you get them to do body weight, loading exercise, perhaps with weights, once they're mobile enough and they understand the exercises properly. Incidentally, on the subject of bone strength, after the age of 40 you lose 1 to 2% of bone mass per year. That's a hell of a lot. And as I say, it's so important, particularly you male in the population with young kids, to be aware you get them off that bloody computers and get them doing low brain exercise, long walks, football, rugby, whatever. They need to do it to build the bones. I suspect the next big crisis is not going to be type 2 diabetes, certainly amongst young ladies, it's going to be early onset osteoporosis. I have no doubt about it whatsoever. However, you can do things about that. Incidentally, I mentioned females there, but the males, hopefully I'm addressing them now, the males of the species, 1 in 8 of them are going to have osteoporosis after the age of 50. 1 in 8. So we're not immune from it, folks. It's not just the ladies, it's us as well. So load-bearing exercise, early in life, throughout your life, get on it. So fundamentally that's it. And also, when I talk about the physique and load-bearing, there's lots of other things going on. For instance, when you build lean muscle mass, with a view to preventing falls prevention down the road perhaps, and other things, when you build lean muscle mass, it requires more calories to maintain that lean muscle mass. This we know. So therefore, your normal amount of calories, some of it will be stored as fat if you're sedentary. If you're now active building lean muscle mass, quite a few of these calories are now going to be used to maintain that muscle. So therefore you're not going to put on quite so much fat, which is good news, isn't it? And also as well, something else is associated with muscle mass is a substance called myokines. So you ever see the letters M-Y-O, a front of a word? It's normally associated with muscles. Now myokines are released by lean, healthy muscle, and they help to boost your immune system. And this era of all these viruses and things floating around in the healthy lifestyles that we sometimes have, if you can build up lean muscle mass and therefore the production of myokines as well, you can have good strong lean muscle mass, much improved physique, so you look aesthetically better, and obviously you're going to boost your immune system. So I've talked about all the nasties here. Can we reverse this process? Of course we can. With a proper structured exercise program, individualised, you can do a hell of a lot to reverse this process and improve the quality of your life. And as the male of the household and the head of the family, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your family to make steps in that direction. So I hope I haven't depressed you too much, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. For those of you who make the effort, and I hope to hear from you soon. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your International Men's Day. Take care.